and that's where my connection with Cornwall happened. It was in about 1915.
Now, the Rick Stein foodie empire came out of very unpromising beginnings. You spent your first years there running a mobile disco called the Purple Tiger. Is this correct?
Yeah, what a name.
The Purple Tiger.
I have found that, Richard, a bit difficult to own up to for many years, but I have to take it on the chin.
This was the 70s?
It was the 70s.
Oh, well, people were always opening discos called the Purple Tiger in the 70s. What were you dressed in? Did you have the big open neck shirt and the chest?
Of course, with the big collar.
Yeah.
And we had loudspeakers with purple tigers painted on the front, of course. It's part of the show.
You would call us John Travolta, in other words, were you?
Well, we played a lot of John Travolta a bit later, of course, in the 80s, but in the sort of the mid-70s. When was? I'm just trying to think.
77 was Saturday Night Fever.
77, that's right.
Yes.
Well, we opened the club, me and a partner, Johnny, in 1974. By 75, it had been closed down by the police.
Ahead of your time. Why was it closed down?
Well, we just had these terrible fights.
You did?
Well, not personally, although I was hospitalised 3 times, and the third time, the sister in the casualty said, "I'm sure I've seen you before." You know, this was before I got on TV. But it was mainly because I don't know. This is really weird, but there was this professional boxer who ran a meat company in Smithfield, moved to Cornwall, opened a meat works in Cornwall, and opened this club in this sleepy little fishing village of Padstow in the 70s with a late licence that went on till 1 o'clock. So you could come out of the pubs in Padstow, the fishermen's pubs, turn up at our place and get absolutely plastered till 1 o'clock in the morning. So there were terrific fights with all these burly fishermen. I mean, and me, aged 24, 25, and my mate Johnny trying to keep order. We just couldn't. We got closed down, and that's why I opened the restaurant as a way of paying the bills.
That was it, was it? It was just simply like, we can't run a nightclub anymore.
Well, we were the police. I mean, the police and the magistrates said,
"Oh, you can't.
You're not fit and proper people to run a license." I remember going into a local petrol station for petrol, and the guy that owned it says, "Ricky Stein, the man they couldn't hang."
Ricky Stein, a man of dubious character,
I know, that's the way I felt. I felt very, very sort of like wanted, and I was determined to prove I was a fit and proper person.
Well, another blow against your good character. It has been said that after you've had a few drinks, you play air guitar. This is true?
Well, I did. Oh, God, how do you know about this, Richard?
We have information. We have informants all over the place, Rick.
Well, we had a staff party 2 years ago, and I suppose I just sort of felt I should do it just to sort of enter the spirit of things. But
no wonder you connected with Australia so well when you came here. Big air guitar culture in Australia.
Well, it's very therapeutic.
So, Rick Stein, tell me about having shut down the nightclub and opening up a restaurant. Did you know anything about food at all?
Well, funnily enough, when I left my school, I started working in a hotel in London, and then I gave it up. I actually gave it up. Came to Australia for 2 years, went back home and went to Oxford University. Rather a weird sort of funny way of going about one's young life. So I had, during the period of working for the hotel in London, learned how to cook and learnt a bit how to cook. I was only there for 6 months, but I also learned how kitchens work, how the brigade works, how all the sections work. So when it came to me actually having to start running my own restaurant, I knew a bit, but the food. Actually, the food was always good because I didn't have that many recipes up my sleeve. I just knew how to grill fresh fish and do very simple things with it.
I have to ask you, why is that so hard in Britain? I mean, I know things have changed, but in a place like Cornwall, I imagine you would have been getting all this beautiful seafood produce.
Yeah,
beautiful there. Britain has always had that trouble of taking good produce and mercilessly beating it into a flavourless pulp. How did you get beyond that?
Well, I was lucky because my parents were very good cooks, and did have a fairly sort of upmarket view about food, that it should be not messed about with. Which is, it's one of the hardest things to learn, paradoxically. It's still the case when you see young chefs, they just want to they want to show off, they want to do complicated things. The more you keep at it, the more you want to keep things simple.
Keep simple. Why is that so hard? It seems really strange.
Well,
doesn't
because
it?
I think it's a bit like sort of you as a young sort of thrust-in sort of gun chef, you want to show people, look, I can really do this. I can make these sauces. I can do these garnishes. I can stuff this fish, you know. But it's sort of like then, if you've got any taste, you suddenly realise, hang on, what counts as a fish? You know, just leave it alone. Just leave it as simple as possible. I just think it takes time. And I mean, I think generally people are beginning to sort of wake up to that fact. I mean, the Italians, the Greeks, the Spanish have always known that with fish. It's just beginning to happen to us back home.
So you started making this seafood and getting a reputation in the area, and people started coming into the area. How did they welcome you, though? Because the Cornish aren't famous for welcoming foreigners, or emmets, as they call them.
Well, I mean, they still aren't. I mean, we got threatened by the Cornish National Liberation Army, which a body which I had not hitherto heard of.
They've not made much of a media impact here either. The Cornish National
Liberation Army.
Who do they want to be liberated from? Gordon Brown, do they?
Well, I think so. Really, the English. I mean, they're one of the things they really dislike is the Union Jack flying in Cornwall, but also they're sort of opposed to second homes and the house prices. And they just, I think, believe that the English, as opposed to the Cornish, should get out of Cornwall. But, you know, a lot of the things that... there was this very nice thing in one of the London papers, because, as I was saying, they're going on about house prices particularly, and this guy said, well, I was actually born in Islington, and I can't buy a house in Islington. I want everybody else to get out of Islington, but only people that live in Islington, you know.
So what form did this threat take?
Well, they just said that because I've got a restaurant in Padstow, Jamie Oliver's got a 15 about 10 miles down the coast, just outside of Newquay, just south of us. And they wrote to us both, or they actually issued a press release, which is, you know, pretty modern, to just saying that we were legitimate targets of the Cornish National Liberation Army, and they would, well, I think they were threatening to burn our restaurants down.
Was it taken seriously?
Well, I mean, it wasn't taken that seriously sort of locally, but they also sent this press release to the newspapers, the local newspapers. And, of course, newspapers being newspapers...
made a big thing out of it.
Made a big thing out of it.
Media blowing things out of proportion, unheard of, Rick.
I know, unheard of. But actually, I was in Australia at the time, and it got into the Telegraph in Australia. Bless them.
Bless them. So what happened when that threat was published? Did you... I mean, you've been there for decades.
I know.
Did locals rally to your support? Did you get local support?
Tremendous local support. I mean, from Cornish people, of course, because, I mean, we employ a large number of Cornish people all the year round. So, I mean, it is a bit ludicrous. I mean, you can sort of see it. I mean, Cornwall's had a bit of a mini boom. I mean, largely because of, well, mainly, I mean, maybe me, Jamie Oliver, but there's one or two good food places in addition in Cornwall. But there's also it's called the Eden Project, which is a sort of enormous sort of biodomes. Where
yes, that's in Cornwall too.
It is, and it's sort of like a world-class... what do you call it? Attraction, really.
It's like how we'll live in space, isn't it? That's the idea.
It's more or less like that. You take everything with you. So, I mean, in this dome. So it's a bit like, you know, one of those films. I can't remember the one, maybe Fahrenheit 451 or something like that, or 415. I bet you
Silent Running.
Silent Running. Absolutely, that's the one.
I had to flick through my sci-fi film Rolodex.
I'm very impressed with that. Silent Running. It is a bit of a silent running, yeah.
You started appearing